What is up, you amazing hackers? I hope you're all doing well today. We're going to talk a little bit about blind XXE. So we have three topics for you today. We're going to go over blind XXE itself. We're going to talk a little bit about XML parameter entities, really interesting one. And we're going to talk a little bit about burp collaborator. So let's get right into it, shall we? First of all, I want to mention burp collaborator real quick. So we'll go over to that tab first of all. Here you can see a cool diagram that burp, that portswigger foresaw for us, so we can use it for our demonstration real quick. Now, what burp collaborator is it's pretty much just a web server, a server that's floating somewhere in the World Wide Web, something that's always listening for requests that are being sent to it. That's it. It just waits there on the internet for requests that are being sent, and it's hosted by portswigger, so you don't have to worry about setting up a server. It can handle multiple requests like HTTP, DNS, SMTP, and we'll show you guys how it works in a second. So the next thing I want to talk a little bit about is XML parameter entities, because we're going to need them in one of these labs. And we're also going to talk a little bit about blind XXE. Let's start with that one, shall we? Now, blind XXE, you probably already know blind cross-site scripting. It's when you launch an XXE attack, but you don't know what returns. Like, for example, when you try to get some data on the system, some internal data, like the etc passwords file using XXE. You can do that, but for sometimes the server only returns, for example, parsing error, or it doesn't return any error messaging at all, or it just doesn't return anything. So you're stuck wondering if your XXE worked or not. And that's why you can test for blind XXE as well. Now you're going to need the burp collaborator for this. So what I've done for you is, first of all, let me show you guys my setup. We're going to start up the lab, which I've already done. I have my Firefox, which is pointing to my burp proxy as well, and we're going to view the details of one of these products. Now I'm going to show you guys what you need to do to actually resolve this blind XXE, but I'm also going to show you guys what you need to do to resolve the labs, because those two are a little bit different. Now, first thing I want to do is, of course, identify my vulnerability. And portswigger has been so kind to just describe it for us. They tell us that it's in the check stock functionality. So that's the first thing, of course, we're going to do is check the stock. And then we're going to go and check our HTTP history, see what it brings. And when we go and check the product stock, we can see on the request, there we go, that there is an XML being sent. So that's the first thing we want to try, of course, is we want to go and check out if we can do something cool with this XML. So I'm going to go back to the solution real quick, because I don't want to spend half an hour finding things out. What you want to do is just copy this, and what you do here is you declare a doc type, and you declare the doc type stock check. And this is because, as you can see, one of our XML entities is a stock check, so that's why you declare your doc type on the stock check. And you declare an entity for this doc type that you just made called XXE, and it's using the system call, and it's doing some call to this HTTP address. So we'll include this in here, and what we have to do when we do that is, as you can see, your subdomain here .burpcollaborator.net. You can click on the top menu and you can start burp via the burp tab, and then you can go to burp collaborator client. Now when you do that, you'll see that a new window will open, and in this collaborator client you get the option to generate X amount of payloads. You might want to generate more for when you're fuzzing, and you can include the server location. So I can copy this to my clipboard, and when I copy it now, I'm going to have my random string.burpcollaborator.net. If I uncheck this check mark and I copy it to the clipboard, I'll only have my random string and not the .burpcollaborator.net. So I'm going to do that in this case. I'm going to uncheck my check mark and copy it to my clipboard. And I'm going to change my polling speed to every 5 seconds, because I just want to be fast in this case. I don't mind performance. The reason they take a 60-second polling rate is because they want to improve in performance, but that's not that important to me. Now where it says your subdomain here, just replace that with the string that you just copied from the burp collaborator client. So what we have open here is a collaborator client, which means that we're interacting with a server, which is the burp collaborator server that we just talked about in the beginning of this video. Now what we want to do, of course, is also call our external entity that we just created. So we'll just copy this XXE and we'll call it in the product ID. It doesn't really matter where you call it, so we'll put it here in the product ID and we'll put point comma there to just finish that, and we'll send it. Now what's going to happen is when we send this request, we'll see an invalid product ID, but that's okay, because when we go back to our collaborator client, we can easily see that we have a DNS call, an HTTP call, and another DNS call. So we know that our blind XXE, and this is why they call it blind, because they only give you an error message invalid product ID, but we know from our collaborator client that we have some calls coming into our system. So that's blind XXE. Not that simple. I'll add on another layer of complexity for now. We'll start with XML parameter entities. So I'm going to keep it real simple for you guys, also for myself. It's just for simplicity and for the sake of this video. What you need to know about XML parameter entities are that they are an entity of the DTD. So they are typical to the document type definition. You won't find them in the XML themselves normally. So you'll see what I mean in a second with that. And they're just like all of the other entities, but they are marked by a %sign. So what that means when we open our solution, as you can see, we have our same doc type, still declared on stock check, this time also an entity declared, but we have a %XXE, and this is what declares our XML parameter entity. Now, as you can see, we declare our parameter over here instead of in the product ID this time. Let's start up the lab real quick, which I have, and again, it's also marked by this lab is also the same. So we go back to the details of a product. Our session seems to have expired, so let's access the lab again. Been talking for too much, I guess. Let's open it in a new tab. And when we access this lab and go to the functionality that we did before, so view details, and we check the stock, we can see that again we create an XML request. Here we go, product stock. So let's send this again to the repeater, see what we can do. Now what we need to do is I'm going to go to the solution real quick again, and I'm going to declare my doc type, and this time I'm going to copy this whole sentence in here, just like previous times, but instead of declaring my entity in my stock check in here, you can see that I'm declaring it in my document type definition. So that's the big difference. XML parameter entities are also useful if the document itself is blocked for some reason. Now what we want to do is again include our random string that collaborator gave us, and we can paste it again in our subdomain here. And when we send this, we don't have to change anything in product ID. When we send this, we're going to get a parsing error. We're going to poll, and as you can see, when polling, we get our new requests in. So that's the big difference between XML blind XXE, and blind XXE using the XML parameter entities. Now, if you guys really want to solve the lab, all you have to do is remove your subdomain from this request, and this is going to solve the labs as well. They do this, I don't know why you have to call the public domain. So as you can see in the requirements here, you have to call the public collaborator and not your private one, which is obvious because they can't check your private instance. Otherwise it wouldn't be private, of course. So that was it for this video. I hope I added some value to your life. If I did, you know what to do, and I hope I'll see you in the next one. Bye.